Welcome back to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. Hare Krishna. This is an opportunity, Wednesday night, to go deeply within the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. We have a little less than 2 hours to hear and chant. And when we can schedule in hearing and chanting for our overall schedule, that is, that we have set up periods of time during the day or during the week, during the day and during the week, is better. When we block out periods of time to do direct hearing and chanting, hearing from the Shastra and then chanting and hopefully also writing things, then the process of Krishna consciousness becomes effective very quickly. When there's a lack of hearing and chanting, one will feel it in various symptoms of weakness in the process of thinking of Krishna or being able to stay steady in the process of Krishna consciousness. And when one has a sufficient amount of hearing and chanting, then one will feel natural spiritual strength, yoga balena. So I always welcome this time, Wednesday night. When I was driving down here tonight, I was remembering how when I first started coming down on Wednesday nights, we were in San Jose, and it was a little longer trip too. And sometimes there were only a couple of devotees that would come to sit and hear the Bhagavad Gita. And nonetheless, it was sweet. And we kept meeting and talking. And Prabhupada started his entire movement in that way. In New York City, he had just a small storefront, and he began by having open classes in Bhagavad Gita. He just put up a little sign saying, "You're invited to come, I'll be speaking on Bhagavad Gita." And one after another, people came and they sat and listened. And by the process of sitting and listening, hearing the bona fide katha of Krishna consciousness, then naturally one gets spiritual impetus and strength. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Preshtaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta. Is that the new one? Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Vani Pracharine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Nitai Gaur Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Go Premanande. Avantika harmonium for the kartal players, for the Hare Krishna singers, for the Hare Krishna dancer in the back, for everybody in California, everybody all over America, all over the world. Go Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaur Hari Bo. Welcome back to ISV, everybody, and if anybody's here for the first time, welcome. We're in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the teachings of the Krishna consciousness movement come down through a line of teachers and disciples that date back many generations all the way to the origin, the original source, Krishna. And the sound vibration as it's passed down through the teachings and especially through the mantras give us the means of support by which we can advance in devotional service in the practice of bhakti. When I say bhakti, then it's been expanded as devotional service, which is a very practical phrase. It means bhakti, but bhakti is defined by the foremost of the masters of bhakti yoga, who were the direct disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu over 500 years ago, as being the cultivation of the practice of devotional service as an active pursuit. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma nyaravritam anukulyena krishna anushilanam bhaktirutama. So this is a definition given in Sanskrit of the process of bhakti, which says that anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma nyaravritam, that those who are practicing bhakti should be sincere. And this means that there should be no motive for attaining something material. And also, there should be no sense that ultimately one is God oneself, and that by the practice one will then assume the position of God. But those who practice bhakti are consider themselves eternal servitors of the Supreme Divine Source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has many features. He's defined, the definition of the Supreme is defined as Janmadhyasya Yataha, which means that from whom everything else emanates, the cause of all other causes, and the source of all emanations. And that original source is completely perfect. As mentioned in the beginning of the Sri Upanishad, Om Purnamadak Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced from the complete whole is also complete in itself. Even though so many complete units emanate from the complete whole, he remains the complete balance. This is a definition of the supreme source of everything. It's completely perfect, and all the emanations from him are perfect, and he's never diminished. And that supreme whole or original source has various features. It's Advaya Gyan Tattva. In other words, there is a oneness. God is one because everything comes from him, and ultimately everything is him, but there's variety within the oneness. And this is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. That generally this is the three categories in which this supreme is considered. So the first is called Brahman, which means the all-pervading, impersonal energy of the Lord, sometimes described as the divine light that sustains everything. And then there's Paramatma. Paramatma really means the supreme overseer and permitter. So Param means supreme, and Atma means self. So there are many supreme eternal individuals, but there's one that is overseeing and permitting others. To put it more simply, there's the feeder and the fed. Which are we? Did you all get fed today? And have you been fed throughout your life? If we look around, and we'll see that all living entities, of course, there may be an artificial standard of living through which we cut off the supply that's naturally there within nature. But all living entities generally have their food, and that's being supplied by Paramatma, the Supreme. What to speak of intelligence, those miraculous ways in which we see living entities move about the world. If you watch bees, for instance, going about collecting pollen or whatever it is they're doing, they know what they're doing and they know where to go, and they also have a sense of society when they get back to their hive. And this is described in the Shastra, in the scriptures, bhakti wisdom literatures. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahavan yo viridhati kama. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. Say? Nityo nityanam means that there's one supreme eternal individual who I'm describing, and then there's a plurality of eternals who are part of that eternal supreme personality. And so eko bahunam yo viditati kaman means that kaman means a desire. So the plurality of living entities have desires. Do you have any desires? Say yes. Yes. Yeah. So how are they being fulfilled? According to this verse, by the arrangement of Nityo, by the Supreme Eternal or the Paramatma. And Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridisani vishto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha, that Supreme is residing within the heart of every living entity and is the supplier of intelligence, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So whatever state of consciousness I aspire for, and whatever way I organize my life around attaining that, he makes the arrangements. So in this way, the Paramatma, which means the super soul, or the super spirit, who is maintaining everyone and supplying intelligence and so forth, is always with us. Always. And he's there supplying intelligence, knowledge, and if we wish, forgetfulness. What to speak of making arrangements for us to sustain our lives or fulfill our desires in many different ways. And living entities go about that in various ways, as mentioned in the Brahma Samhita, Pantastu Koti Shatavatsara Sambragamyo Vayoradhapi Manaso Munipungavanam Sopyastya Praparitin Simya Vichintya Tatvego Vindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. There are various ways in which people try to come in contact with that Paramatma, various systems of yoga and various philosophies through which one tries to come closer. And he, the Paramatma, is the one who is fulfilling the desires of each one of them, according to their approach. And so then the third aspect of the Supreme, Advaya Gyan Tattva, the Supreme Truth, which is one, but who has divisions within the oneness, is called Bhagavan. So Bhagavan, Bhaga means opulence. For instance, an opulence is beauty. If the most beautiful person in the world walks by you, then what might be your reaction? What? You might take a look. Or if somebody very wealthy happens to knock on your front door, you might say what? Oh my God. Strength is also an opulence. People admire strength, beauty, wisdom. Those who are highly learned, those are very strong. Those are very detached, and they have so many things, but they're not concerned with that. These are various opulences. So bhaga, and van means somebody who possesses something in Sanskrit. So bhagavan means the possessor of all opulences. So this describes the qualities of Bhagavan, or the Supreme Person, who I also described in a more generic way with the verse Om Purnam. It's completely perfect. And it is that Supreme Bhagavan in the Bhagavad Gita who speaks the Gita, and who also says that Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyasya cha shashvatasya tadharmasya sukhasya kantikasya cha. This is giving an ontological perspective, which means, the verse means, that the other aspects of the Supreme, that is Brahman, the impersonal, all-pervading feature of the Lord, and also the Paramatma, the Supersoul who resides within the heart of every living entity within the material world, and is the overseer and permitter, are emanations from Bhagavan, or they're subservient from Bhagavan. Or this verse says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, that he's the basis of these other aspects of the Supreme. And therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam begins by pointing our attention towards Bhagavan, towards the Supreme Personality of God. Therefore, when you walk in a Hare Krishna temple, you'll see lots of pictures of a person who's playing a flute and so forth. To the untrained mind, this may seem a little bit startling, that because the normal tendency towards those who are studying transcendence without the guidance of the Bhakti scriptures is to assume that the ultimate goal of one's meditation and the ultimate goal of yoga is something impersonal. And there's a logic in that, and that is that the material world, if we analyze it carefully, and you can do so by looking at it or by studying physics, which is another way of looking at it more minutely, you might come to the conclusion that it's endlessly mutable, which means it's always changing. And my desire is that it doesn't change. In other words, people don't like change because we're non-changing entities, but around us the world's constantly changing. This can be frustrating. Do you think? For instance, in relationships, one may have the best of relationships, but eventually it will change. Yes or yes? Yes. So one may build an empire and be sitting on the top of the world, ruling everything. And will that remain forever? No. As we know from the poem Ozymandias, which describes a placard lying in the desert, worn away by the blowing sand, where the great king Ozymandias had declared himself the emperor of the world, and now his entire palace has toppled by the force of time, and the placard which declared him to be the emperor is now worn down by the sand that's blowing across the desert. And this is the fate of every empire and every relationship in the material world. Therefore, I may think that the material world, because it has form and because it's temporary, must be the opposite of the spiritual world or the spiritual destination. Therefore, I may then conclude that spiritual life means to be void of desire and void of form or relationship. So this is compared to the logic of the number line. On a number line, I'm in material life, the comparison is that I'm on the negative numbers, because as I move about this world, I incur a debt. Did you incur a debt on your way here today? Of course, you got spiritual credit for coming here, but what kind of debt might you have incurred just by coming here today? Did you use any gas in your car? That cost you something. What else? Yes? The debt of what?
I was thinking about death of others also, like the moment you start your car, so many die like that.
Yeah, what to speak of all the energy that went into creating it, how many things were overturned to mine out all the metal and put it together. People sacrificed their lives to build the car and so forth. The material world, if we analyze it carefully, is a world of exploitation. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, Hastani sahastanam aparani chatushpadam palguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Jivo jivasya jivanam means for me to live in this world, I have to exploit others. I have to take their life in order for me to live. And the more well set up I get in the material world, the more I'm taking advantage of others to do so. So there's a debt to pay because of that, and this comes out in the form of karma. And one who realizes this may think, well, this is not very good, because after all, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. So one might think then, where to go? So the next logical point on the number line from the negative numbers is, you're all scientists. Where do you go from there? Yeah, you see that zero on the number line, and you might say, "Oh, well, I'm heading for zero to take shelter, because I'm really getting entangled in the negative numbers of the material world." So I move all the way up to zero, but zero, which was invented in India, cipher comes from the land of India. We wouldn't have computer science without it. Zeros and ones, but zero is zero after all. There's nothing there that is intriguing to us except for relief from the negative numbers. But the Srimad Bhagavatam says we can't live there because it's not our nature. And this goes to the point of bhakti, that I'll never be satisfied at zero, I'll never be satisfied at a void or being free from desire, because it's not my nature. The living condition is that of desire, activity, and ultimately of love, and there's no love in zero. So bhakti then comes to teach us that there's a full life on the other side of the number line. And that's the life of fixing one's mind on Bhagavan. And we find that bhakti is very simple. It means simply to turn one's attention in all the ways and through the various ways that we live. That includes what? How do we live? Eating, sleeping, yeah, you just got to sleep, and worrying, yeah, you got to worry. What else? Working, yeah, that comes to mind. Working, thinking, speaking, cooking, having relationships. There's all these things are natural, and So Bhakti says that all of these things are actually natural, only they have to be purified. And when the activities we named eating, sleeping, working, and so forth, are purified, that is what I began the talk with, anyabhilashita shunyam jnanakarmanyanavartam. We're working, eating, moving about, developing relationships. But the ultimate goal of them is not to enjoy for oneself, not to exploit and collect scarce material resources so I have more than everybody else, and not to become one with God, but actually to serve, to use everything in service. So can you use sleep as service? How? Wake up refreshed and start your day and practice in bhakti, right? You got to sleep sometime. In fact, a god brother of mine wrote me today. I saw him, I was in Las Vegas over the weekend because there was a temple opening there where hundreds of devotees went down to the Las Vegas Strip and had a kirtan along. They said it was, I didn't get there till Sunday because I was here on Saturday, but they said it was the best kirtan they ever had. And in the process, I saw my godbrother there, and he said, "How come you always look so young and healthy?" And he didn't say anything, but he wrote me a letter when it came home today, and he said, it's an element that's free and that you have available to you all the time. And he said, it's not pure water or air. What do you think it is? And I have no idea. Tell me. So he said, sleep. He said, you have to sleep enough. And he gave me various quotations from Prabhupada indicating that one has to get enough sleep in order to be healthy. And so, anyway, Krishna says this in the Bhagavad Gita, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chetsasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, which means don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. You have to be balanced. So all of these life activities that we're already doing that are natural to us, you can't stop doing. You stop doing them and you'll start doing them again anyway, right? They need to be purified and transformed. And so bhakti is a way of transforming. And how can things be transformed? An example is of an iron rod. If you take an iron rod, it seems like a solid object, and it is. I mean, practically speaking, if you go into physics or something like that, that may be a different thing. But if you look at it, you hold it, it's very hard and heavy. And if you place that in a hot fire, like a blacksmith's fire, and you leave it there, and you continue to stoke the fire, then the iron rod will transform from a metal that it is into fire. It transforms. So it begins to glow. It's absolutely fire-like, and it is transformed completely. So in a similar way, when we use everything that we're already engaged in now as a dedication to the Supreme, we're using it for service to Bhagavan. Then whatever we have and whatever we're using becomes transformed, and it's no longer material, but it becomes spiritualized, just like the iron rod that turns into fire. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahmakarma Samadhina. Krishna gives the example of one performing a fire ceremony. And a fire ceremony is an ancient ceremony, which is prescribed in the Vedas for invoking the Supreme. And in fact, the science of geometry was not invented, but it comes from India from thousands of years ago, when those who were performing these fire ceremonies had to very precisely measure the fire pit, because it had to be exactly in accord, just as much as when you're doing your technical work in IT, and I'm just assuming a large part of the audience might have some connection with IT, you have to be very precise. If you're off in your design, when you're designing chips, for instance, by even a milli, what is it, the smallest? A micron? Yeah, you can ruin the whole thing. In fact, Damodar Vilas was telling us about his entrepreneurial career. He's one of the most famous men in Silicon Valley for starting companies and inventing chips and all kinds of things. And he was telling us at one point he and his team had invented a particular chip, and it should have worked, but it didn't. And memory was draining out of it slowly. And so it didn't work the first time, even after huge investments and everything like that. And when he went back and looked at the schematics later, it was off by the tiniest fraction there was a tiny little gap somewhere in the schematic, the way it came out. So it lost its energy. Now, I went down an alley, and where was I? Yeah, so the fire sacrifice geometry, so they had to measure very carefully. So the science of geometry originally comes from those measurements. And in those ceremonies, everything was done precisely according to the direction in the scripture, and that would invoke the presence of the Supreme and so forth. So Krishna is giving this example in the Bhagavad Gita that everything that's used, the fire pit, the fire, the person who's offering the ghee into the fire, the spoon that's being offered, the vocal cords of the chanter who's chanting the mantras and so forth, because it's being used for this divine cause, everything becomes transformed. So in bhakti, one also uses one's life as a way in which to offer everything in sacrifice, or I should say as dedication. Sacrifice is a scary word, so change it to dedication. Dedication sounds more agreeable, and it is, and it's noble when one's dedication is aimed at the Supreme. So anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmanya navritam anakulyena krishnanu. When one develops an awareness of the various features of the Supreme and very deliberately dedicates one's activities towards Bhagavan through a process of bhakti, which incidentally begins with shravanam, which means hearing. And if you dedicate your hearing process towards listening to topics about Bhagavan, for instance, there are authorized channels that describe Bhagavan. The topmost, according to the bhakti yogis, is the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be a book incarnation of Bhagavan, the book incarnation of the Supreme, which is quite remarkable. And if one utilizes that by keeping it in one's home, listening to the vibration that comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam, then one's able to transform everything in one's life. One's mind becomes transformed, one's speaking power, one's listening power, everything, just like the iron rod, it develops a spiritual quality. And one also, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, rises naturally to the level of self-realization. This is described in the Bhagavatam itself. Starts off by saying, Shrinvatam swa kata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyan taksto hibhadrani vidhunoti suritsatam. So this verse says that by listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam, which includes the science of self-realization leading up to the direct topics that describe the transcendental activities of Bhagavan Krishna. By doing this, then the Paramatma who I described, who's within everyone's heart, I mentioned earlier, who's the witness and overseer, is enchanted by hearing it also. And notices that a person is dedicating his or her attention to listening to the topic, and then Bhagavan, or Paramatma, just as he helps everyone in every activity, begins to help the practitioner of bhakti to advance in devotional service. And the specific word used in the verse is vidhunoti. So vidhunoti is a way of sorting out the material desires from the spiritual desires. Sometimes those who are aspiring for the process of to advance in bhakti ask the question, how do I know what's the difference between a material desire and a spiritual desire? Right? Yeah. So Krishna helps us to sort those things out. That's what vidunoti means. And the example is often given of cleaning cotton. You know, when you pick cotton, it's not all fluffy and white the way you see it. Well, we don't see it very often nowadays. We just wear a cotton shirt. But if you were to pick cotton off the vine, you would find that it comes with a lot of seeds and also some stems, and it requires cleaning. So a vidunoti machine has some cords, and you place the unclean cotton on top, and you vibrate the cords, and all the impurities fall through to the bottom, and it leaves you with fluffy white cotton. And similarly, through the process of hearing the vibration of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna helps within one's own heart to winnow out the impurities and separate them, leaving the pure motives and desires within the heart. So this first verse says that you get help when you put your attention towards hearing, shravanam, especially the topics coming from Bhagavatam. Then you get natural help from Bhagavan within your heart. Then the next verse says, what is Nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. This describes how the person then advances in devotional service naturally and notices that I am becoming free from the lower modes of nature. And then tada rajas tamo bhava kamalubadayasche. So this means that one then is freed from the influences of the lower modes of nature. This is an important topic, which is brought up by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, where he describes in great detail the ways in which we get stuck in the material world. Did you ever feel stuck? Please say yes. Make me feel better. Okay. And so it's like glue. It sticks wherever we go. Everything you look at, everything you hear, people you talk to. There's a way in which the material world is very sticky, and I keep getting stuck to it. And it's strong glue too, kind of like super glue. Once it sticks, it's really hard to undo. You need some kind of solvent to undo it. Or like mango sap. If you ever get mango sap in your hair, you might as well just shave your hair off, because it sticks and it doesn't come out. So, the modes of material nature, they're also called gunas, they're ropes. And if you notice a rope, it's a conglomeration of little tiny threads. And the more and more they're tied together, the stronger they get. And then those threads become cords, and the cords are then tied together more and more until they become a thick rope. And then it's impossible to break that oneself. And these bind us to the material world. So especially the lower modes of nature are what we should watch out for. The low mode of ignorance, which is called tamas or darkness, it covers our knowledge completely. And we have no inclination at all towards spiritual life, nor do we even have any inclination towards or impetus for material life. We just don't do anything. Have you ever touched that mode before? Please say yes. Yes. Thank you. So that mode is characterized by inertia and the inability to move away from the television set even after 17 hours. And there's a kind of ignorance. Ignorance means ignorance. In fact, important to bring up a philosophical point, which may be jumping the gun a little bit, but the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. If you think about the word indifference, it's kind of interesting. Indifference. There's differences in the material world. There's differences between ourself and the Supreme. But when I'm indifferent, I just, it's all one. It doesn't matter. It's all just sleep and nothingness. And to be indifferent means to not understand how to interact properly with different entities also, including between myself and the Supreme or anybody else. This is ignorance. And it's also mean ignorance, which means I'm ignoring my actual nature and my real interest. In ignorance, we can completely give up our real self-interest and do something that's completely against our self-interest. Is that possible? Have you ever seen it happen? That somebody does something that's completely contrary to anything that's good for them? Possible? Something you've witnessed? Anything you ever tried before experienced yourself? Like, why am I doing that? It's possible. The Gita says altogether possible by touching the dark mode of ignorance, which he said is really dangerous, and actually he uses the word jaganya guna vrittista. He said it's a really horrible thing. It's very dangerous and destructive and abominable. So there's that binding mode, that cord that ties me up, that's very sticky and dangerous. And then there's rajas, which is just above tamas, the mode of darkness. Then comes what's sometimes translated as the mode of passion. This is the impetus for improvement in the material world. No matter what I have, I want something better. If you get a job and they offer you $1,000, what do you want now? $2,000. Somebody gives you $1 million, then you want $2 million, at least. And it is characterized by unlimited longings and desires, and they never end. And one can go on running in this mode until one drops dead. Running after something that one will never actually catch up with. Just like in the desert, sometimes the deer see a mirage. It looks like water, they become thirsty, and they run towards it, and they drop dead trying to reach it because the mirage is always moving away from us because it's an illusion of water. It's not actual water. However, if one is able to touch the mode of goodness, from the mode of goodness, one can understand that I don't need to endeavor so much to sustain myself because, first of all, I'm not my body. The body is a self-sustaining machine. It just needs a little bit of help. It doesn't need a whole lot of extra help. Just the minimum help will do to keep the body running. And also, one gets some clarity in the mode of goodness that my real interest in life is to develop spiritually. Because from sattva, or goodness, one gets light. And when we say light, we mean self-effulgence. It means when the light of the sun comes up in the morning, we see everything as it is, naturally. And it becomes self-evident. All the things that at night seem to be scary and treacherous, when the light comes up, then the treachery and the mystery dissipates immediately, and we see things as they are. So in sattva, or goodness, or light, we naturally see ourselves. And our self is something categorically different from the biomechanical body. And we can also then get an inkling that I have a connection with an original divine source. And this comes naturally as one purifies one's senses. So the senses, the mind, and the intellect, in the process of bhakti, become freed from the lower modes of material nature, and they become illuminated by sattva. And from that position, sattvam yad brahmadarshanam, one is able to see Brahman, or spirit. And so this is a natural result of regularly hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the claim made in the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Tada rajas tamo bhava kamalubadayas che. So it's saying, tada, at that time, when one's heard sufficiently and has practiced bhakti by hearing, then one comes to the point where rajas and tamas begin to subside. They go away. Thank you. And Cheta iter anavidam stitam sattve prasidati. Then one begins to see the illumination of sattva, and then the symptoms of natural advancement in spiritual life emerge. And that begins, evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogata bhagavat tat vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. Which means that one becomes happy, one begins to feel joyful for no reason. Why are you happy? I don't know, just for no reason. Because that's our nature. Our nature is to be happy, but when I identify myself with the material body and mind, then I naturally become morose and full of anxiety. But when I'm able to separate myself from the lower modes of material nature, then naturally I come to my original state of consciousness, which is evam prasanna. Prasanna means joyful. And what is that? Evam prasanna manaso. The mind becomes joyful. Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata. And how is it achieved? How does one do that? Simply Bhagavat Bhakti Yogata, simply by the direct process of bhakti, which begins with shravanam or hearing. And then Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, this is very important, that one begins to understand the science of Krishna consciousness. So if someone offers me, that you pay me $100 and I will teach you the science of physics in 2 days, what do you think? Sounds like, what? You'll do it. 2 days may not be enough. It requires some time to study any science, and similarly, science of spiritual life requires some investigation and the gaining of gyan, which turns into vijnan. This is mentioned earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Tachchadadhana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya. One has to be fortified with transcendental knowledge. And this pervades the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. This kind of transcendental knowledge is imparted again and again and again through the first 9 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And one also gains one's own insight, which becomes vijnan. Bhagavat Tattva. Tattva means one is established in the Bhagavat Tattva, or a very clear and true understanding of what is Bhagavan, or the Supreme. And from there, mukta sangasya jayate. Mukta means this liberation from the lower modes of material nature. My unnecessary attachment to the material world. The material world is completely superfluous. I am to my real interests and to my nature. However, I become attached to it nonetheless because it's a reflection of the original supreme source of everything. But now, mukta sangasya jayate, this liberation comes into my life. And finally, vidyate hridaya grantish chijante sarva samshaya shiyante chasya karmani drishta eva manishvare. The next verse says that there's a way in which vidyate means pierced or cut. So when you take a sword and you cut through the ropes, then you're free. And similarly, through this process of Bhagavad Bhakti Yogasya, the yoga of bhakti, then one cuts the lower modes of the gunas that tie me to the material world. And chidyante, it's cut to pieces. Sarva samshaya, all one's misgivings. For instance, in the beginning of taking to spiritual life, one may think, I can't afford, I don't have any time. It's a risk for me to take to spiritual life because if I give up my standing in the material world, if I give up my day at work, then I'm going to lose so much. And everything seems like a risk, taking up spiritual life. Besides, what about my, could impair my reputation, so many considerations. And as one advances in devotional service, one sees that material life is all risk and no gain, whereas spiritual life is all gain and no risk. And this is what it means, samshaya. Sarva samshaya chidyante. All my misgivings are shiante. They're terminated, or they become eliminated one after another by the association, hearing in the association of devotees. I gradually become free from misgivings. And in that condition, one applies the same amount of enthusiastic endeavor for spiritual life as one may have previously applied in getting a foothold in material life. There are various ways in which one may advance oneself materially, aren't there? Like? What? Okay, use the mic.
Like in career, one may want to advance.
A career? Okay. What does it take to get a career these days?
Put others down, show how others are so bad.
And you need to study for some time to become expert in something. And of course, we're not saying don't have a career or anything like that, but there is a great endeavor that I have to put into something in order to move up. And I may have to jockey for a position and so forth. And many other things. You have to get a wardrobe, don't you? I read many years ago, oftentimes the cost of getting a wardrobe and then buying a car to commute and the gas and everything like that, it diminishes the actual profit of one's hard work. It kind of balances everything out. It's like, why are you working so hard? Got to have a wardrobe, got to have a car, kind of food to eat so I can work harder. So there's a realization that one's energy is most effectively applied towards bhakti, practices of bhakti, and also a very positive realization that emerges, and this is called shraddha. Shrad means the heart, and da means where you place something. One becomes very much convinced that by practicing bhakti, then everything else automatically becomes arranged properly in my life. The more I practice bhakti, the more all my karmas. I may have an idea, I have to, so many things I have to do in this life, ways in which I have to take care of family, career, and so forth. But all those things are naturally attended to when I become attentive to bhakti. Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Surida Nishchoy Krishne Bhakti Sarvakarma Krita Hoy. Krishna. So this means that this Shraddha means that I'm more and more aware of the fact that my best investment every day is to engage in bhakti, in the processes of bhakti yoga. And therefore I try to rearrange things so that I have more and more time. And in fact, the whole varnashrama system, through which one goes through various phases of life, is meant to give one more and more facility to point one's attention towards practicing bhakti. This is Daivi Varnashrama. So those are a few thoughts. And before we go on to the next segment, we'll just take a few reflections. Anything that you heard so far that stuck with you? Yes, Rinda Sevika.
Hare Krishna, Guru. Hare Krishna.
Turn up the yellow mic just a tad.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I like the transformation, how it happens, just regular activities, just...
Here you're getting a trade in.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I like how regular activities like thinking, working can become spiritualized through applying it in a proper way in serving Bhagavan. So it's like I like the analogy, like a metal rod, by putting it in the fire. It becomes actually like glowing and becomes a fire. Great transformation. It's pretty simple.
Yes, and this is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. The theme of Bhagavad Gita is that Arjuna has a occupation. He's a policeman. And when you call a policeman, you expect a little help. And he wanted to quit his job and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Meanwhile, he was right in the middle of a crisis. So Krishna told him, you don't have to quit your job, but you do have to change the way that you're doing it. You dedicate it to the Supreme. And if you do that at the same time that you're doing your job, then it'll become transformed. It'll become spiritualized. And so that's practical because everyone finds him or herself in a situation where you can't just walk away. You have obligations, you have work to do, you have things to think about. And the more that you can bring those to the way of dedication to the Supreme, then the more they become transformed. And the more we become free from the influence of the modes of material nature. Thank you. Yes?
Like the material world is all risk, no gain, and spiritual life is all gain, no risk.
All gain, no risk, yeah. All gain, no risk. That could be on our billboard out there. All gain, no risk. Yes, Shoda Kripa and then Shraddha.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, I particularly like the word that you mentioned, inertia. You mentioned mode of ignorance is characterized by inertia, which is the feeling of just not doing anything, not even materialistic or anything. So that actually took me back in my high school days when I first learned the word inertia in my physics class. I spent a moment to find the precise definition. So Google says, a property of matter by which it continues in its existing state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line, which is a number line, I guess, unless the state is changed by an external force. So mode of ignorance could be the state of rest. We just don't want to do anything, but if we can get the mercy of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, we can actually give a direction to this inertia to be in the state of motion, which is also non-stoppable. So we can actually give a positive direction to the inertia.
Yes, and it is also a principle of bhakti that one needs some intervention, because when I'm in when I'm influenced by tamas or ignorance, this kind of darkness, I need somebody to intervene and shine a light, and this is the idea of avatar. So avatar means somebody who comes from the higher position of light and beyond the control of the material nature and descends into the fray, into the mixture of material nature to assist those who are stuck. This is the idea of avatar. So when, in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, Krishna makes his avatar, or his descent from the world of light into the darkness of the material world, to give assistance and wake up. And that's necessary. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Maya Mugdha Jivaranahi Swata Krishna Gyan. That it's not swata, it's not automatic that jivas, the living souls, come out of darkness. They're stuck there, and they need somebody to come in and say, oh, excuse me. This is given by Socrates in his Liberation of the Cave Dwellers. He just described how living beings in the world are so accustomed to this darkness, that as if they're living in caves. And so the way he set it up is that they're sitting in the cave, and they're facing the back wall of the cave. And all they see on the wall is shadows that are moving, that are coming from the dim light that comes into their cave, and then any kind of movement they see on the wall, they take this as the whole reality. And they become accustomed to it. This is the idea of conditioning by the modes of material nature. You think, oh, this is reality. And then he said something very profound and perhaps relatable to those who teach spiritual values in the world, that if someone were to come into the cave and say, oh, this is a very restricted condition you're living in, and actually you're in a world of darkness, you're just looking at shadows, and you won't believe this at first, but there's a sun outside that's self-illuminating, it lights up everything, and there's a big world outside. he said that these people, when they hear this, they may become angry and say, that's insane. That's too fantastical. We don't believe it. Get out of here. They may even try to hurt the person who comes in. So he suggested when somebody comes in to teach about the world that's outside and the world of light, they may have to make a hole somewhere and let one tiny little pencil of light come in and touch the wall and say, see, it's like that. And you see that on the wall? That's light. That's not shadow. And the sun's like that, only like 1,000,000 times more. And so similarly, the Upanishads, which are this summarization of the Vedas, they give us this insight that there's a difference between matter and spirit. They begin talking about the sense of which the material world is a very temporary, dark place, and that there's the world of light beyond it. And it tries to give us some idea of that by saying, where can you see this in the material world? You can't see God at first, but where will you see this little pencil of light? Consciousness. Where can you examine it? In yourself, yes. So therefore, oftentimes, people who misread the Upanishads, they say, see, the Upanishads are pointing to the spirit, saying it's yourself, therefore, I'm God. They missed again. But the idea is, if you want to understand the nature of the outside world of light, somebody's letting a little bit in against the wall and saying, here, take a look at it. Look at yourself. What is the nature of your own consciousness? And categorically different than matter. Observe it and see what is its quality and nature. And then you can start to understand that I'm not part of this world. So the cave dwellers then need to be educated gradually until they can be convinced that there's a world. And then if they come out into the light, it may take them some adjustment period too. To come out of darkness into light, it requires some adjustment. So in a similar way, he said those who are waking up to a spiritual awareness also must gradually come into that understanding. What else? Shraddha.
So Maharaj, two small things from my side, and then there are lots from the internet. I was reminded of, when you were describing the material world, I was reminded of the term that you had used earlier, the tar baby. This material world is like a tar baby. You try to solve things and you just keep on getting stuck over there. And then on the mode of ignorance, I was thinking that the height of ignorance is that you don't even know who you are. And how much more ignorance can you be? And then I looked up the word ignore to see what it is made up of. And a very interesting thing came up. It says that ignore comes from two words, like from in, which means not, and then gna, which means knowledge. So not knowledge.
And na, it's Latin, right?
Yeah, there's Latin and French as well.
It's cognate with gyan.
Yeah.
It comes from Sanskrit. Gyan, and the word know is cognate also. So this word ignore means without gyan. No gyan, no knowledge. It's blocked. Yes.
And Bali Mardan Prabhu actually was admiring the example that you gave at the very beginning of the class of how very few people used to come to the San Jose temple for the Wednesday class.
Yeah.
And then how Prabhupada also started in a small way and then went big. So
yeah.
That.
Yeah, if you want to restart the Hare Krishna movement, all you have to do is get yourself a Bhagavad Gita and the mantra and go anywhere and sincerely chant the mantra and read the Bhagavad Gita and discuss it. And then what will happen is sincere souls will come, will want to practice the mantra, will want to hear the Bhagavad Gita, and it will expand from there, and it'll go all over the world, so you can do it too. You too can restart a Hare Krishna movement anywhere, yes.
And then Hansavya Mataji said that I really like the point of sorting out the material desire from the spiritual desire. Krishna helps us to sort that out. It's like cleaning cotton with Unati. Impurity falls through process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and comes out and brings out the fluffy white cotton. Thus Krishna helps leaving impurities behind and helps one with the pure desires within the heart. Thank you. For the
Yes,
class.
thanks Bali and thanks Hansapriya. Nice to hear from you. Yes, this is called Buddhi Yoga. And Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita also. And that is that as one practices devotional service, Krishna gives one the intelligence to discern matter from spirit. Tesham satati yuktanam, etc. From 10:10 in the Bhagavad Gita. And did you have one more? Yes, go ahead. And somebody else is calling in.
Okay. This is from Vaikuntha Nayak Prabhu from India.
Vaikuntha Nayaka, Hare Krishna.
And Danvards Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I like the analogy that you gave of the number line, that is material activities are negative numbers, and then Shunyavad is 0, and spiritual life is the positive numbers.
Yeah, Vaikuntha Nayaka likes the scientific stuff.
And then he also has a question. You mentioned vidunoti, that is to sort out material desires from spiritual desires, but sometimes the mind comes up with material desires cloaked as spiritual desires. For example, mind justifies that I have to make a lot of money so that I can be comfortable to execute devotional service. How can we distinguish such material desires that masquerade as spiritual desires? Dandavad.
Well, sometimes it takes a while to figure out, but because we may have some intention and go about it in a certain way, and Krishna may very kindly frustrate us in our activity. So, I mean, we can apply a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto where it is said, Satyam drishati artitam artito nrinam naivartato yo artito yata swayam vidhate bhagavan anichatam ichapitanam nijapada pallavam. In this verse it's mentioned that someone may take to devotional service, but then start to ask Krishna for all kinds of material things. Again and again, it's like, give me this, give me that. And so the verse goes on to say, yes, ichapitaram bhajatam anichatam. Huh? What is it? 5:19:27. And so then someone may ask again and again for material things. So Krishna says, I give it to him, but I do it in such a way that you figure out, hey, I actually don't want this anymore. I'd rather have pure devotional service. Icha pitaram nijapada. Nijapada palavam means one comes to a conclusion. Nija means personal, and pada palavam means Krishna's lotus feet. So icha pitaram means he covers over those material desires and leads one into devotional service. So, and also, we may have some idea for doing devotional service in a certain way, and maybe it's tinged. But Krishna is very expert at helping us sort it out. So the Bhagavatam then says, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udarati tivrena bhakti yogena ijeta purusham param. Which means that whether you have all material desires or no material desires, or you desire liberation, or you just want pure devotional service, you should still approach Krishna. Because by doing so, he will rectify whatever misconceptions are there ultimately. And there are many cases given for this. For instance, in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva Maharaj, who was a 5-year-old boy, he was the prince. And he went in to sit on the lap of his father, a natural thing for a 5-year-old boy to do. But his father had many queens, and one of the queens was the stepmother of this boy, Dhruva. And she said, you can't sit on his lap because only my son can, because she was the favorite queen. And his father didn't say anything. So Dhruva took that as a huge insult, because he had hot Kshatriya blood running through his veins. So he ran crying to his biological mother, who told him that, the only thing you can do is appeal to the Supreme. Say, how do I do that? Say, well, yogis go to the forest. So he said, I'm going to the forest. So he left the palace and he just charged out into the wilderness. And there he was met by his spiritual master. It was an intervention. because Krishna is in everyone's heart, and discerned that this living entity is trying to approach me, even though he was going about it in a kind of a sort of a hasty way. And Narada then helped to refine his practice. So if you're going to practice, do it like this. So when Dhruva, who's now famous, went to the forest, he practiced these really intense methods of Ashtanga Yoga. And gradually he came to see Krishna face to face. His desire, his constant prayer at the time was, I want to spite my father because he didn't allow me to sit at his lap. So I want a kingdom that's not just better than my father's, but also better than my grandfather's. So that was his desire. But when he came in contact with Krishna, then he said, I was mistaken. I was asking for the wrong thing. These material desires, he saw them as broken bits of glass. And he said, now I've attained a jewel. And so one can assume that while one's practicing devotional service, one may have spiritual material desires cloaked as spiritual desires, but they'll gradually be revealed and they'll also be purified. So one has to keep going. Does that make sense? Yes. Oh, somebody called in on the phone. Who's there? You still there? Okay, you can come back.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the nice lecture. I like the point about Srimad Bhagavatam. You said that it can gradually raise the consciousness of the living entity. And also, in a letter from Prabhupada, I think I read that he was saying that book distribution is the highest humanitarian activity because books like Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita can change the life of the living entities.
Yeah, Bhagavatam says that. Anarto pasanam sakshat bhakti yogam adhoksije lokasya ajanato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. There was a huge conspiracy. Vyasadeva, who's the literary incarnation of Krishna, he's an avatar. And he comes specifically to produce literature so that human society can take advantage of it. That's what this verse means. He understood that without this intervention of knowledge, people like books, humans always have, and they still do. Anywhere you go, of course, people look at screens more now, but living entities are endlessly looking at something, trying to get a little knowledge. And so he compiled the Vedas with the specific idea of giving readable books. For instance, he gave the Mahabharata with the Bhagavad Gita in it. And that was meant to be a bridge book, because previously when people studied the Vedas, it required a rigorous lifestyle. You had to grow up learning the sound vibration of the Vedas. Sahasra Shirsha Purusaha Sahasraksa Sahasrabat Sabuming Vishato Vritvat Atitishtat Shangulam Purusha Eve Rangung Sarvam Yat Bhutam Yachtabhavyam. There's all intonations and everything had to be learned from the time you were a little child in order to imbibe the sounds of the Vedas, and they had to be memorized perfectly. And to do that, one had to live a completely pristine lifestyle, one that's not available anymore anywhere on the planet. And so Vyasadeva knew this because Kali Yuga was impending, and therefore he compiled books like the Mahabharata, which is a page-turner. It's kind of like, one of those romance novels you look at and show, I could read that, that's about my life too. And within it, there's philosophy. And so after he did that, and he put together Puranas, which are stories that teach about spiritual life, then he still didn't feel satisfied. So his guru came to visit him right at the right time. Narada came and said, "What's wrong? You don't look very happy." And Vyasadeva said, "I'm not, and you have to tell me what's wrong with me, because I'm doing my service, I'm keeping all my vows, but I'm not happy." And Narada knew just what to say. He said, "You haven't very specifically described Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead." He said, "It's necessary for people to hear about the features, qualities, and pastimes of Bhagavan in order for their mind to become attracted to the spiritual world. And you haven't done it specifically enough. So do it again. Start over. So Vyasadeva went back into his meditation. He went into deep samadhi. And there, by the grace of his guru, he was able to see the pastimes of Krishna in their entirety. When he came out of his samadhi, then he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also known as Samadhi Bhashya. It's the speech one gives after you have complete revelation through your samadhi. So he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that is what he knew to be, after meeting his spiritual master, the panacea for people in the age of Kali Yuga. And it's also mentioned as the incarnation of Krishna in the age of Kali Yuga, is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it was deliberate. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, is through the 9 cantos. If one reads these very carefully and systematically, one's life will transform, without a doubt. And if you just say, look, I'm taking a month off, and you just read Bhagavatam for 5 hours a day, you will not be disappointed. It's a life-changing experience. Every year when we go to Govardhan and we spend 1 full month, 30 days during Kartik, and every day we have, we align our schedule so that we have 5 straight hours. Well, they're not in a row. There's 3 and then 2, or 2 and then 3. And we just hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And afterwards, everybody who's there, it's usually about 25. It fluctuates between 25 and sometimes 5, depending on they have to, go back to America or wherever they're from. Then afterwards, everyone who's participated for any length of time says, life-changing experience. You walk out and see the world in a different way. So hearing process, if you can dedicate even a portion of your day every day to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll notice the effect for yourself. So after you take the spiritual life, then you have to take responsibility for your own practice. And part of that is, in the process of bhakti, is most definitely to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Right, Srivas Pandit Prabhu? He's our teacher here. Okay, so what else? Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. The 5 verses of Bhagavatam you just explained, it seems like, they are like steps from going point A to point B. And point A is the consciousness of material world, versus point B is pure Krishna consciousness. So starting from Nashtaprayashu Bhadrasu all the way to the Vidyate Hridaya Granthe. Thank you, Guru.
Yes, it's a gradual step-by-step process. That's right. And also I might mention that besides Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, one must have the mantra. So meditating on the mantra is very important. In fact, a few statements that Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes about chanting the mantra. Very specifically, in our line from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had taken the mantra from his guru, Srila Ishvara Puri, who gave him the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And told him that by keeping a vow to practice this mantra as the primary practice, that everything will manifest in due course of time, that the heart will become soft, the knowledge will be abundantly available. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after learning from his spiritual master, wrote the 8 verses of the Shikshashtakam. The first one, just in summary, begins by saying that by this chanting of the mantra, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So he says that the consciousness, the Cheta, he compared to a mirror. And he said that the mirror becomes sullied here in the material world by contact with the modes of nature. But by chanting the mantra, then the mirror becomes polished. Chetadapada marjanam. And then bhava means the forest fire of the material world. Say bhava. Bhava, it's like the whole world's burning down. And if you tune into any news network every couple hours, you'll notice like, wow, something else is burning now. But the whole world's burning. In fact, my body's burning. It's 98.6. That's pretty hot. And the cells are gradually burning out. Then, people assist the process by like smoking a cigarette. You get hot burning. Everything's burning in the material world. Bhava Mahadavagni. So it's compared to a huge forest fire. I'm in the middle of it. And there's only one hope to put out the forest fire, and that's if a big rain comes. Big rainstorm's got to come. And so this chanting of Hare Krishna is so momentous that it's like huge storm clouds come in and they begin to inundate the forest fire and they put it out. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava. And then good fortune arises in one's life. One's life actually becomes auspicious. Your mission in life becomes very clear. Oh, I didn't know that. Advaita. Okay, good. Thanks for telling me at the last minute. I'm glad to know. So we have, if we'd set up over here for Advaita, please bring a chair. We have a 5-minute Bhagavad Gita class. I'm getting a lot of notes here. This is like the relief of the rain cloud coming in with Advaita. So the 5-minute Bhagavad Gita class is, if you'll move this table over here for Advaita, please. A slight misnomer, 5-minute Bhagavad Gita class, because he has time to give his introduction. He'll sing a bhajan. Probably, I'm just predicting. And then maybe say a pranam mantra, and he'll read a verse, and then he'll give commentary on the verse. And his commentary is 5 minutes. And after the commentary, then we have an opportunity to give feedback. So the feedback goes as those things that are the highlights, things that worked well, and then we'll just throw in just a tiny bit of anywhere where there's room for improvement, and then we'll end with those highlights. So now we introduce to you Advait, who's going to speak to us from the Bhagavad Gita.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Radha Madhava Bihari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gautamānanda, Hare Bol. Hare Krishna. So today I'll be speaking on Bhagavad Gita, on the Bhagavad Gita 12.20, and I'll be trying to repeat the words of Krishna and Prabhupada. Yetu dharmamritamidam yutoktam paripasate shraddhadana matparama bhaktastetiva me priyaha. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from my Vaisesika Mano Ye Mam, fixing the mind on me, through Yetu Dharmamritamidam, this religion of eternal engagement. The Supreme Lord has explained the process of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman, or one who is engaged in the personal service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was raised by Arjuna, and the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the Personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. In other words, in this chapter, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service, and thereby accepts a bona fide spiritual master from him, and accepts a bona fide spiritual master from him, begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The impersonal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth, as described in the chapter, is recommended only up to the time one surrenders himself for self-realization. In other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruitive result, meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. Therefore, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness in pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. Devotional service, as described in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, is more congenial. One may not need bother about materials to keep body and soul together, because by the grace of the Lord, everything is carried out automatically. So basically what Krishna is trying to say, and Prabhupada in this verse, is that devotees who serve Krishna very much through the process of devotional service have a very special seat in Krishna's heart, because they're very, very dear to him. And another thing I'd like to point out is that Prabhupada uses the word imperishable in the translation, and that's because any devotional service done for Lord Krishna is imperishable. He never forgets that. But in the material world, if you have so many achievements or a PhD, that's only for this life. It goes away. It's perishable. It's temporary. And so, one example I found for this verse is the relationship between Hanuman and Lord Ram. And Hanuman is such a great devotee towards Lord Ram. He serves him through devotional service as much as he could. He fought by Lord Ram's side. He found where Sita was. He brought the mountain with medicine back for Lakshman's recovery. And so one example of one story that I have is Hanuman was looking at a list that Lord Ram has, and it says that it was it had the list of the devotees who remembered Lord Ram constantly. And Hanuman was disappointed because his name was not on that list. But later Ram told him, there's another secret notebook in my heart. And in that notebook is the one where has the devotees that I remember all the time. And so he took it and showed it to Hanuman. And Hanuman was on the top of that list. And so this shows how Hanuman is very, very dear to Lord Ram, and he has like a special reserved place in Lord Ram's heart. And one thing I liked about the purport that was Prabhupada wrote was that you should have good association. You should have good association for doing devotional service, and he explains it in kind of like a chain, because he first says you should have devotional service, a good association for devotional service, and from devotional service you can accept your bona fide spiritual master, and from there you can chant Hare Krishna and follow the 4 regulative principles. And I like how Prabhupada describes this like as a chain where he's trying to make apparent that good association is at the bottom of everything. It's like the base of Krishna consciousness. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, chapter 22, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about the process of devotional service, and in text 83, he says, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Haya Sadhu Sangha Krishna Prema Janme Tenu Punma Mukta Anga. And so it means that the root cause of devotional service to Lord Krishna is association with advanced devotees. Even when one's dormant love for Krishna awakens, association with devotees is still most essential. And so these 2 verses are saying that You should have good association, and especially the purport of the first one is saying you should have good association for devotional service. And once you do devotional service to Lord Krishna, you're very, very dear to Lord Krishna. Hare Krishna, thank you for listening.
We just have a couple of minutes, but please offer some high points. Yes, aprame.
I like the fact that you were prepared and like you already had the pages open and you didn't rely on like spare notes or something like that.
When you started the class, you mentioned, I'm just going to repeat the words of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, so that was very nice.
I like how you tied in like different examples like Hanuman and then the PhD. It really connected it all.
I like how you had two.
Go ahead.
You had two verses each time, like you had two verses, one verse to back you up from like a different scripture.
Okay, now you all get the room for improvement. Any room for improvement? Huh?
Actually, first I wanted to clarify that Gita Priya, we were not laughing at you. We were laughing at ourselves for that we didn't get a chance to say good things about him. Just room for improvement, small things is that maybe you can improve on the eye contact and engage us a little bit more. And then also that if the mic is giving you trouble, you can stop at some point and then adjust it. Take your time and be there. Otherwise, wonderful presentation. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, just a couple technical things. That's it. Now, high points. We have like 1 minute, 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I'm so happy to hear Advaita, because I know how your mom's devotion comes through you, that you were so natural, that when you give the examples and how you connected it, it just came from your heart. And thank you for giving us a nice presentation. Can you share the verse number later?
I can do now.
Okay.
So,
Chaitanya Charitamrita.
For Chaitanya Charitamrita, it was Madhya Leela, chapter 22, text 83.
So let's thank Advait for an excellent class. And thanks everyone for coming out on a Wednesday night, everyone who came here to the live studios here at ISV, and everyone who's joined us online. Everyone please say Hare Krishna, everyone who's online.
Hare Krishna.
A little louder though, please.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, now we're going to move all the seats and open up the dance floor, because we're going to have an Artik ceremony and we're going to have dancing and chanting. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai.